the stocks.
Hi, we have a great show for you today.
Eve, I've been this bad. Hi, this is Ellie Elgin, and welcome. Help! We're in beautiful downtown Williamsburg. Yeah, after just doing this for a little bit, I realized you'd come out there with a real bad headache and neck ache.
And probably a little bit of an earache too, because generally what would happen is they would take a nail and drive it through your earlobe into the wood.
Oh.
And then when you get out,
Yeah.
they'd simply pull your ear away from the nail, leaving a scar, right? A notch in the ear,
Oh my.
and you'd be marked as a criminal that way, earmarked.
Earmarked. Oh.
Ellie, this is Bruton Parish Church. It's one of the oldest buildings in town. The church itself was built in 1715. The steeple was built a little bit later, 1775. There's quite a few people buried in the cemetery at the church that are historically notable. Among others, Martha Washington's 2 children are buried.
Not just again, but still.
Hey, how are you doing?
Hi, Laura.
Hey.
Well, what's for lunch? Or dinner, I should
70
say.
years or so, yeah.
This is dinner, and it's a pork stew.
Pork stew.
And they're getting ready to bake bread.
And we're preheating the oven.
Yeah.
Hey, well, welcome. This is a brick oven. This is a military-style brick oven where we can simply preheat right now. Then we'll circle the coals. Then we'll take the coals out, put them in the ash pan, clean it out, and then we let it cool down to bread heat. We always like it hotter than what it is, so it cools down to the temperature that we require. And then, of course, once you've done your bread, you can do your pies, your puddings, your small cakes, which you would call cookies, I would call a biscuit. And then, of course, you've got your large cakes will be the end. And of course you can use this to dry overnight. It's brick on the inside, clay on the out. The building behind you is the kitchen where we made the wonderful pork stew. We do our own butchering here of our own pigs, our own cows and our own sheep here, so we get the right cuts for the right animal. Americans, French, Scottish prisoners of war, free and enslaved monarchs. The old Christiana Campbell's Tavern is where James Anderson puts his workers, those that are either married or living, out of town, coming in. So he will feed you, he will give you lodgings, and then he won't have to pay you as much.
Oh, wow.
I knew about these.
That's why I was trying to get you in here.
I
That should
know.
be the stew there.
Yes, and I can remember when I worked as Mary Peggy's Guild, getting the hot coals out, putting it on the hearth, and cooking on the hearth.
She did the reenactments she was a docent doing in costume for the house when they
I was
do the
not a
tours.
docent.
Well, okay.
I was never a docent.
Okay.
I actually trained people to be docents. I was a living history interpreter and coordinator.
Gotcha, I remember. Oh, look at you.
Hi, Eleanor. I'm Ellie. Can I pet you?
She's a sweetie.
Oh, you're a sweetheart. Oh, look at you. Yes, you like your ears, yes. Yes, and the tubs. I have to keep them filled with water.
Going towards the blacksmith place.
on what we call the metal.
When did the rounded head come into play?
The rounded is more of a finishing nail. So these are standard nails, just like you'll see in the walls here. So if you're in your next townhouse, you want to put up some very nice hinges like these. You don't want to have your standard ones on the outside. So for finishing nail like that, you just make it pretty much the same way as a regular nail. You might also have a kind of a swedge tool that you'll hold over the head and hit it, and it'll create that nice smooth dome. And then for a further feature, if it's going to be really something that you won't put a lot of effort into, you can also file it, make it nice and smooth. Yep. So again, as he's working here, the smith right now at the fire is making, or he's doing a replacement piece for a set of andirons for a print shop across the street. So the original piece was this part of the andiron here, and it had this piece connected to it. You can see how this is really warped. In this case, it's just going to be easier and more time effective for us to hammer out a new piece. So that's what he's going to do.
The blacksmith shop is one of the latest reconstructions. Even though we've been doing blacksmithing here for decades, this building is relatively new. Reconstructed a couple of years ago. And the Armory complex was just completed last year. This whole complex of buildings on this site, basically to reproduce the scene that would have been here during the American Revolution when James Anderson, the master of the blacksmith, was also the public armorer for the Commonwealth. So there's a lot of different activity going on in this site. We had 40 people working here at some time.
So the brighter it is, the softer it is. So when you see him making this right angle bend, it's going to be working at a higher temperature than that. But as it starts to lose that heat, that's going to be kind of more straightening and cleaning of the piece. So when you think about hammer marks, obviously you're leaving hammer marks in the metal. At these higher temperatures, when it's that dull red, that's when you're going to hit it again and smooth it out. So in the case of say this axe is made the same way, but you see it has that nice smooth finish, and that's so in the 18th century, ideally, it should look almost as a spring machine that a hammer never touched. One of the misconceptions is that people like to hammer look on some of their utensils. In the 18th century, it's really called if you call a hammer touch.
But this is a lot. Well, it's warmer down here than it is in down there.
And we wanted Center Street to be very, very dimension wide, and it's a mile long. It stretches from the College of William and Mary to the old Capitol building of the East End. It's 100 feet wide. And there's an 18th century letter that describes the street as a mile long, 100 feet wide, and a foot deep in the rainy season.
What deep? It's lifting those skirts at that point, correct?
It's okay if we videotape?
Absolutely.
So Ellie, why don't you ask him what's available
What's available?
for purchasing?
Yeah.
Everything that you see. So William Pitt was obviously a merchant. We offer items for kids. So we have all the games. We have the Game of Graces. Yes, we do.
I know how to do this game.
And in the spring and summer, we'll definitely be outside playing the games for the kids. But all the games, we also have in the next room, we have all of our dresses. And then we have boys' waistcoats and breeches over there, and the shirts. So we sell those. And then we have, in the back rooms, we have some souvenir items for you.
Oh, wonderful. What's your top seller, hot product?
Hot products. So I would say, well, we can demonstrate the Game of Graces is fantastic. And then behind you is Shut the Box.
Shut the box.
Shut the box. So, are you familiar with this game?
Yeah, I think we had one of these at the 1840 house.
So what you would do is just roll the dice, and then you can take one or two tiles down that equal to that number.
Yep, there's.
Yep. And then you would continue to go until you no longer take any tiles
Oh,
down.
got a good one this time. I can do 3 and 5.
So shut the box is definitely our most popular game.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Good day, ladies. How are you?
We're going to take a small break while I go to the necessary.
We're fine doing the work by hand. We do the work quickly. A man's suit should take one tailor 1 week. If we have a shop with more than one tailor working in it, we can get the suit done in a matter of days. We need to work quickly, we need to work well, so that we can keep our prices low. Since everyone gets custom-made clothing, everyone has to be able to afford custom-made.
Now, on the fashion, for example, you are dressed in a different way.
I'm dressed fairly informally. I'm wearing a wrapping gown based on the Japanese kimono. It's worn as an oriental coat. I'm just at my ease this morning, this afternoon. Maybe because my master isn't in the shop today, and so I can be a little more comfortable. It's not that my other clothing is uncomfortable, but in the work that I do, this is much more comfortable to wear. Another oriental coat that we wear is the bani. Comes from the Bunya merchant trading caste of Calcutta, India, and it's adopted for Western wear as well. So the buttons are just there to be for fashion. There are certain types of coats that do button all the way down the front. This fly coat, a utilitarian overcoat, will button all the way down the front because it's meant to protect the clothing underneath. But the fashionable coats are cut so that they just meet at the chest and then cut away. The three-piece suit is introduced in the 1660s from France, brought back from Charles II, who was exiled to France. And when he's brought back and placed back onto the throne, he introduces it to the courtiers there in France. He's the one that gets to say what everyone's wearing in court. So he says, this is what we're going to wear now. And it's the coat, waistcoat, and big loose pajamas. See, it came from France. It originally came from Turkey. It was known as the Oriental suit or the Turkish suit. Well, the French and English courtiers really didn't like the loose pajamas. Prior to the introduction of that three-piece suit, it was the doublet and breeches that were worn, or trunk hose. They went back to the breeches as they felt that fit in fairly nicely with the fit of the coat, the vest, and the breeches. But at that time, in the 1660s, it's all much looser. The coat hangs straight down. It would be able to button, though the vest would button just about mid-thigh, or upper part of the thigh, and then be loose down to the front. The coat could be buttoned, or might be buttoned just at the waist and left open at the top and at the bottom. But it could button all the way down if you needed it to. Obviously, for cold weather, that makes sense. Throughout the 18th century, it starts cutting away more and more. The waistcoat raises in height throughout the 18th century. By the 1770s, it's slightly cutting away. The very corner of the front is meeting right at about the outside of the kneecap. By 1790, it's changed. Cut away very much, almost to swallowtails, but it started coming back here in the center to where we have that double-breasted tailcoat that would be very common in the 19th century. But the tail's still cutting away in the back. And that's where we see the tailcoat is still worn for formal wear.
Everything in here except what's in that case. Those are antiques over there from the 18th century, but the rest of it's our work. What I've been working on today, we are silversmiths, but every now and again you got to, there's the odd sort of side thing, side project that you got to do. And this is making another copper tool canister for making or for holding tools like these. These are called chasing tools. It's for getting like doing the designs like you see on the teapot right there. So that's actually steel punches that are used to. It's called chasing or requisite or embossing sometimes in the present day. But that's how we do it. And so I'm going to be doing a little bit more of that. But anyway, we need more of these things, and so this eventually is going to be one of those. So started out as a flat sheet. You can bend it around, solder it down the side. So there is a seam here. And you can make silver things like this too. A lot of cups, I think there's a teacup down there, teapot, excuse me, also has the seam done. Now the other way of making things out of silver or other metals is by taking a flat sheet of silver like this, a flat round sheet of silver generally, and bringing that over here to stakes. So we have these things called stakes, which are made of polished steel. You're going to place those inside a device, and then take your flat sheet of silver, draw circles on it with a compass, and then brace it up against these, and you're going to hammer and turn. And as you hammer and turn, it's going to start rising up. The walls are going to start rising up like that little progression there. Now, generally we make these things either for an apprentice project, or we do it if somebody has ordered it. Right? Somebody comes in, they order it, we'll do it. But we don't have any orders for little camp cups right now or tumblers, but so I'm doing a little copper one. So a lot of times we do copper things just because the copper is, it's like 20 or 30 cents an ounce versus $20 an ounce. And then once you've done this, just first all the way to the shape that you need it, then you got to hammer out all the hammer marks. So hammering out the hammer marks is about as exciting as it sounds. And that's taking a different kind of hammer, and I'm not ready to do that on this piece now, of course, because I still have to make it into a vessel. But this is generally what it looks like. And you're going to follow the same lines and iron out all those hammer marks, make it nice and shiny. So once you've done that, then you polish it up, and you got your finished piece. So that's how we do a lot of the hollowware. Then of course you can forge out spoons and things like that too, like cutlery just from a bar metal. Or hammer the silver out into a sheet and then cut out different shapes like this. That's how we made that jewelry there. Yeah, we made the teapot in here, I guess about 20 years ago. And the owners of that teapot, they wanted a creamer and what is the other thing? Sugar bowl. A sugar bowl, yeah. So in the same style. So that's why we.
Are we able to go this way?
Yeah. You are, yeah, right around the corner. Take a look at the rest.
Here we use this for melting the silver. When hammering the silver, it gets real hard from hammering it. So if you hammer it too much, it could crack or break the silver. So to prevent that from happening, we'll heat it and cool it to soften it to work it again. And also, we melt silver in here. We place the silver in a crucible, place the whole thing right in the fire, and using the bellows, we'll heat this up to about 2,000 degrees. This forces the air through a pipe in the wall, brings the air down underneath, makes the fire hotter. And we burn charcoal as a fuel. Charcoal is a very clean burning fuel. A blacksmith, for instance, uses coal. It was a cheaper fuel in the 18th century. But it's a lot of contaminants in coal. If you ever see coal, it has a lot of sulfur in it, and so you don't want your food to be cooked with coal. You want charcoal. It's a very clean burning fuel, burns very hot. It was a premium fuel in the 18th century because you had to process it. You have to charred wood. It's charred wood, and that's what the silversmith uses too. Very very clean wood, right? And that's our forge there we use, and all of our stakes and tools we use for hammering. I'm working on some repair work here, which is something the silversmith did quite often. We're repairing a couple of ladles here, and at the same time I'm making some ladles. Here's a little fluted ladle I've just finished up this morning. Did some polishing work on a little fluted ladle here. That represents about 4 hours. You can leave that open for a second, Jeff. Thank you. About 4 hours of work for a ladle like that. Larger punch ladle, right? About 5-6 hours, half day's work or so for a larger punch ladle. You see there. Neat.
Okay.
This bench.
Yeah.
It's a bench here. 3 people could easily make use working at the bench here. These leather aprons work to catch the filings here in the bench there, along with other stuff. But all the silver was very expensive in the 18th century. Silver was money. So any silver that you could keep, it was keeping your money. We would weigh what you brought in, and I would make the item for you, and you weighed it when you got it back. And if it weighed less than what you had given me, I would take some of that as my fee, as my services in making it for you. And that would be things like filings and bits and pieces and things like that. And then you could take your money home, you could use it, save it, make it work for you as a spoon. And if you needed to buy something and all you had was this ladle, they could weigh your ladle. And if your ladle weighed more than what you were buying, they could chop the bowl of it off and give it to you as change. That was cold, hard cash, right? Worth its weight in silver. So it didn't matter what your money said on it. That made it valuable. What mattered what it weighed and what it was made out of. So if you can imagine, any filings or silver bits or pieces, it all adds up, right? The floor, if you notice the floor out in front with the squares, most of our removing of the silver is done out there, and that's why that's made like that, to catch that there, and then you can walk above the silver. Later on, we'll lift the grate, sweep it up, we'll screen it, wash it, and burn it, use it over again. That adds up to a lot there.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Very informative.
What colony are you from, ma'am?
Colony?
Maryland.
Maryland.
Maryland, and north of us.
Oh, this is like a jewelry shop. I guess this is where you buy it. This is where they. No wonder they did well in those days. Free delivery.
That's not talking about your baby. Oh, okay, what would the shop, this would be the James Curtis Jewelry Store.
So they make the jewelry, they made everything over there. They wouldn't necessarily be side by side.
Right. Sometimes you're considered a silversmith and sometimes you're just a jeweler. So, but usually you were able to do more than one thing. So sometimes you were one and the same. So a lot, basically, they were doing a lot of repairs for people.
Okay. And why don't you say, well, welcome to the shop, or hope you enjoyed your tour, or something like that.
Well, I hope you enjoyed your tour.
So that I almost have an hour of this material.
Oh, I know what that is. That's nothing. That's nothing.
Oh, okay.
Good day, how are you? Come in. Welcome to Mr. Tarpley's store. If we can help you, show you anything, or answer questions, please ask. Mr. Tarpley was a merchant back in the 18th century, and he did very well here. He did well enough to be able to purchase the bell that's atop the Bruton Parish Church, and same bell that still rings today.
Yes. So you have fine chocolate, and I put my purse in the car.
Oh, no!
We did. We left everything in the car.
Oh, well, there's a dark chocolate drink.
Gourmet things and.
Yeah, we are a tavern store. We would have things that people. Once you eat in the tavern, there are dishes from the 4 taverns.
Mead making.
The wines, the beers, the foods, the flatware, the silverware. This is an 18th century recipe researched and made by the Mars Candy Company. It's very dark, and it has some spices. You'll taste a little cinnamon and nutmeg and a little pepper taste. And isn't it good?
That is good.
Oh, I know. Would you like some, sir?
Okay, it's still warm and
Mars chocolate makes this, but our folks.
He bought one of these, and I was about to tell him, break up a little piece, let it melt, and see if you can put some flavors, this one. And you couldn't possibly finish it, but there's a, yes,
Here's your ghost come in the door now.
there it is.
Yep.
To the bus stop. Oh, cute. Isn't that cute? And that is pewter.
But the other shop we were in was more souvenirs.
These are mainly items from the taverns, the flatware, the glasses, the dishes, the stemware, the foods.
I think you put salt in your water when you're cooking vegetables.
Okay, Ellie, this is Merchant Square, and the origin of Merchant Square is when the restoration began in the late 1920s and early 30s. There were businesses spread throughout what is now the restored area, and those businesses were definitely part of the community. So what the Rockefeller and Goodwin did when the restoration began was, let's consolidate all the businesses in one small area at the west end next to the college of William and Mary. Hence Merchant Square. So you see all these businesses here, and you will not see gas stations and things like that in the middle of the restored area.
Good. Jim, this was fascinating. I loved it.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, loved it.